It's always a pleasure to be here and a real delight, especially this time again. And thank you very much for Jeff. I'm a little embarrassed because that's a hard act to follow. We'll see. But here's my notes. So we are here by the grace of God, and I think we all know that. And this Sahavas being titled with that word grace, I think it brings to home our appreciation for Baba's grace in our lives. And to start at the top, we might, it's God's mercy and compassion is given to the world through the Son of God, who showers His grace upon the world. And this is what, is this falling down? Okay. Yeah. Okay. And also Baba says, pure love arises in the heart of the aspirant in the response of the grace of the Master. And then he says, as soon as the disciple is ready, the grace of the Master descends. For the Master, who is the ocean of divine love, is always on the lookout for the soul in whom His grace will fructify. And that means us. And we are in this place where we are living in His grace because Baba has come to awaken us to His presence and His love in our lives. And that He made the effort to come down from His God state into the human form and suffer for the sake of humanity and go through all the travails that He has gone through in His lifetime so that we could awaken. He came to the United States in 1952, just after completing the Manonash and New Life. And some of us feel that He brought that energy to us, which is very powerful. I mean, just think the annihilation of the mind in the West. How could we do without that? So, but all of these thoughts, the hardest thing was for us to assimilate what Baba was giving us and to grasp it. But even before meeting Baba, we used to follow everything that was happening in his life. You see, I knew of Baba since I was born, and through the years there was this contact with Baba, and especially the New Life circulars were being sent to us, and we followed that. And my sister and I and my brother were always very interested in knowing what is it like to meet Baba. And so the tension mounted through the years because our parents told us about it, but there's really no way that I feel, or I did feel, that I could have been prepared to meet Baba. And someone said, well, when you're ready. Well, I didn't think I was ready at all. And but Baba knows best. And so the long-awaited day came in 1952. I was 18. People are curious about that, but it gives you a sense of I was old enough to be able to grasp something and just beginning my life in entering into the adult world. And so our family traveled down from Myrtle Beach, from New York State to Myrtle Beach for our appointment with God in human form. Our appointment was on May 10th, the same day as Adele's and Phyllis's. And that's a special bond between us because it was the day that changed our lives. The kind of happiness of meeting Baba is just indescribable. So here I am going to try to describe what cannot be described. But I had some fears about meeting Baba, and I was also afraid I wouldn't love Baba. And we sat on this little bench at the center in front of the lagoon cabin. The door opened, and there was Baba. And I was afraid to go in first, so it wasn't out of politeness that I hung back so my mother could go in first. And then I entered, and Baba was standing with his arms wide open. And he gave me this embrace that you can never forget, because everything melted in his love. There were no fears, there was no mind, and for that moment anyway, and to be embraced by divine love is just something beyond words, because it's so sweet and so natural, so right, so much so that what it's supposed to be is nothing foreign about it. It's like, this is the way it really is. You recognize coming home to your real, that's how I felt. I'd come home to my real home, and that's the spiritual home of where we all belong. And we all know that. There's part of us that we all know that deep inside of ourselves, and we recognize that home base. And I finally, through the years, realized that I have had the malady, the sickness, the malady of love. Can you relate? And life can never be the same. You can never have the usual satisfactions that most people have. Not that you miss it, because you have the melody of love. And that gives you a longing that cannot be satisfied, that thirst that cannot be quenched. And so you are always ill. And there's, as Saint Rabia, the Sufi mystic, said, there's no cure for the malady of love except the God-man. And eventually he brings us home, to our real home, into full consciousness of what real home is. And we know that's our own identity. One of the things about meeting Baba is that I was finally able to put words on it, and that is, Baba sees himself in you. And it's rather startling in a sense, because your mind doesn't anticipate something like that. And once you have to acknowledge that that's true, and if he's seeing himself in you, that means you cannot deny that he is in you. And he's always there. And he said to us, they belong to me, meaning my brother and sister and me. And we were teenagers, and I thought that was terrific, because I thought that was good for my parents to hear. I was trying to be independent. And it took me a while to really grasp deeper and deeper meanings to that. And of course, Baba says we all belong to him in the real sense. So therefore, we don't belong to ourselves. And all of our paraphernalia doesn't belong to us. So all this possessiveness about our personal identity doesn't work when you belong to him. And so, they sound like mere words, but eventually we discover deeper and deeper meanings to mere words, because Baba gives us the experience of what those words mean. And each one discovers that on their own, because they develop their own inner contact with Baba And Baba works in these mysterious ways of revealing himself in us. But this time in 1952, he was revealing himself in front of us in his body. But still, when he's sitting there and you're sitting there, there's part of our mentality thinking that it's coming from over there. But when you feel something, where do you feel it? Do you feel it over there? You feel it in your heart. And so that removes all this whole idea of externality. And once again, we come back to Baba being within. And of course, Baba took away my first question immediately. He pointed to my sister Renee and me and said, "They have not met me before, they love me." And then he said, "Jean loves me, the whole family loves me," and various other things. He said, "God in heaven is happy that you have come." And I was so surprised that you could make God in heaven happy by coming. I mean, Baba himself goes through all this to come to us. And he comes to each one of you through all the trouble he's gone through to make that possible. It really is a grace. And so Renee and I were quite staggering by the impact of meeting Baba, because we couldn't have expected that our minds wouldn't be able to function in a normal way. Because I for one, felt I was functioning at deeper levels of my being that I never knew existed. In fact, I felt Baba introduced me to the core of me, the place where of true assessment of who Baba is. And it's not as though I hadn't known who Baba is by my family background, but there's part of a person who wants to know from one's own experience who Baba is. And so we each reach out to Baba for that answer through our in wishing to experience that, who he is. And Baba reveals himself the more we get ourselves out of the way. But he says, try, and we do try. So Baba got down to business immediately. He treated us like old family friends. He asked my parents, "How do I look?" You know, they hadn't seen him since 1934, and they said, "Very good, Baba, wonderful." And he was just beaming and bright smiles. You know, in one sense, he looks like a human being, and yet all these other things are happening. It's as though the whole room were lit up, and there's so much energy and sweetness and light and beauty that you cannot grasp everything. And at the same time, Baba's hands were always working like this, and we immediately understood that he was doing inner work without having to be told. Adi was doing the interpreting on the alphabet board at that time. And so Baba asked rather simple questions about our family, I think maybe because that's all we could cope with at the time, mentally. But then he lowers the boom and gives you the biggie. All of a sudden, he turns to Renee and me and he said, in the most innocent expression on his face, as though he were asking you if you want some ice cream. "Would you do anything I ask you to do?" Here you are, a teenager, you're signing your life away. And it was immediately I jumped at the chance. Inside it was, yes, Baba. And of course my mind kicked in and I was thinking, well, later on I know how hard it is, I'll muse about how hard it is, but my answer, of course, is absolutely yes. And Renee said she was so struck by the heart that she needed to hear it again so her mind could really grasp it. And then Baba said, "Is that yes or just yes?" And we said, yes, Baba. Really, yes. And then Baba said, would you jump in the lake? And we said, yes, Baba. There's a lake, a long lake there at Myrtle Beach, close to the lagoon cabin. And of course I could swim, that was no problem. You see, Baba right away doesn't leave something for later on, like I wanted to think how hard it would be, so he started naming off the things that could be hard. And jumping in the lake wasn't hard. So now he says, with the alligators. And I thought, well, what could happen? You lose your life in the jaws of the alligator. And it was a simple matter for me because Baba's love is so much that it was no problem. It was just automatically, yes, Baba. Eagerly, yes, Baba. And so Baba said, isn't that right, Darwin? They will obey me without hesitation. He said that about 3 times. And later on, Renee and I thought the reason he says something so many times is to cement it, to make it possible, so that that's the way it will be. And then Baba went on to say, I am in the deer and the alligators and in the snakes. I'm in everyone and everything. And if you knew that, you would not be afraid of anything or upset by anything. And so that is a lifelong project, because most of us deal with some form of fear, or anxiety is a form of fear. And to know that Baba is in everyone and everything, it's one thing to say it, but to really experience it is another thing. And I can't say that I'm at that point where I experience it, but just to know it is very, very helpful. So, Baba dropped the bomb right away. and this, we had several appointments with Baba in 1952. And we stayed off center, whereas Adele and Phyllis stayed on the center some of the time. But we stayed in an apartment, and we would go over to the Lafayette Hotel in the evening and watch the new Baba people come in. And the people who hadn't met Baba were so anxious, just as we were. The people who had met Baba were just sparkling. And Renee and I just loved to see that. And we were so anxious for these new people to meet Baba and watch them change, just like that. And also, after meeting Baba, we just couldn't stop smiling. We were so happy we couldn't even keep a straight face. And tears would just come out of our eyes just randomly. And we thought, are we ever going to stop crying? And could we ever be in Baba's presence without crying? But eventually, Baba takes care of that too. And on another time with Baba, in our family interview, Baba embraced us coming and going. In this time, on the goodbye embrace, Baba held me so that I could look directly into his right eye. And for the split second, I had a choice of looking away out of fright, because I somehow knew I could really look into Baba's eye, that it wasn't some casual thing. I must have been prepared for many lifetimes to do this, because now in hindsight I can understand it takes great daring. And at that moment, some part of me knew that I had to leave all that I knew, all forms of security, and just swing out and let go of everything that I knew and enter into Baba. And I looked into his eye. In this split second I looked, and I kept looking, and looking, and there was no end. I no longer saw a human eye. I kept looking and it went on and on and on. And what I saw was formless, brilliant light. It was all beauty. It was just so expansive, and I was in it. Now you could say, what's so interesting about light? But it is so dazzling, there's nothing more interesting. It completely occupies you. It's so beautiful that you never want to leave it. And so Baba gave me just the tiniest little thread of who he is and what it's like, the light of his love. And in a split second, this embrace was over, and no one else suspected, and it seemed so normal. I never mentioned it for years. But it's occupied a lot of my attention over the years because it doesn't go away. And we're meant to dwell in the light of Baba's love. And so he showed me what to do. Just accept his grace. He gives it all the time, and that is by letting go of everything. What do you have to lose? He gives you everything, so that's what happened. One day Baba took our family, out to his house in the car, and Adi Sr. was driving. And you know those roads that they go twisty and turny around the center over to his house, and Baba kept saying, faster, 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 and we were going, wow, he's going pretty fast for the center. And Baba seemed to be enjoying that. And we were in the back seat looking at the back of Baba's hair. It was braided in the back. And my mother was looking at his ears, and she was thinking, my Baba has big ears. And Baba was going to my mother to keep up a conversation. So she was very good at small talk, and she was entertaining Baba and imitating some of the southern dialect and that sort of thing. When we got to Baba's house, we all piled out, and Baba was about to have us enter his house when Baba turned to my father and snapped his finger like that to Darwin, my father. And Baba got the message, and Darwin said, oh, you're reminding me of the times in 1948-49 when I used to come out to the center when Baba's house was being built. And I used to stand over here at the stairway and think of you. And Baba went, yes. He was confirming. You see, when my father was doing that at the time, he always wondered, was he reaching Baba? And Baba knew that and confirmed it. So then Baba gave us a tour of his house and was acting like the host, and so glad to show us all the special things and all the cabinetry in the kitchen, and pointed that out to my mother. That pleased her. And, all these human interest type of things he related to in those ways. Another day was the big darshan program at the barn on May 17th. Baba said 1,000 years from now, people will be singing about it. And in fact, next year will be 50 years. That 50 years ago this happened. This time in history where Baba gave this darshan for the first time in Myrtle Beach. And hundreds from the town of Myrtle Beach and elsewhere came to see Baba for the first time. And chairs were set out on the grounds outside of the barn, and a printed page was given to people about Baba. And people were asked not to ask Baba questions, but just to go in and be greeted by Baba. And that's how it happened. And my mother was asked to be on the back porch. Those of you who are familiar with the barn, there's the front entry door, there's the inside of the barn, and the back porch. So my sister and I thought, well, we could just stand there too. And we did, because you couldn't help but want to have a whiff of Baba and to peek in and see what was going on. And Baba didn't stop us. So we took advantage of that. And people would come in and see Baba. He sat in the big chair in the middle of the room, and then they'd come back out. And they were just dazed. They would be crying, and they would be not able to find their way down the stairs and have to be helped. Baba just hit them just like that. His love just bowled them over. So it was wonderful to be a part of that momentous occasion. Also, the black people came. A whole group of black people came during that time. Baba stood for them. He didn't stand for the others. He stood for all of them, which was very remarkable because that was a time when segregation was still being practiced. Actually, in 1956, when Baba came to our shores, and he was in the airport in Wilmington, he asked where the men's room was, and he was headed for the segregated rooms, and he chose purposely to go into the room for the black people. So Baba was doing some kind of work for them. There are other stories that other people can tell you about. Adele can probably tell you many more stories about 1952. And we were all sad to see Baba, to leave Baba in Myrtle Beach. But then he was progressing on to Prague, through to actually to Meher Mount. But as you all know, Baba had the tremendous tragedy that he foretold, and that was his accident where he spilled his blood on our shore, on our soil, and had his bones broken. And Baba said, this was no accident at all. If I can find that. This disaster has been Baba's cross, and you all took parts in it, and Baba is happy and proud that Mera took as great a part as Baba did in it. And in a message from Baba to Mera, he said, "This is the greatest of my sufferings, and it is the last, and since you, Mera, as my beloved, had to bear half the share, has made Baba feel very proud and happy." So that tells us, how much work, inner work, spiritual work, Mera was doing with him on our sakes. Also, this was Baba's grace. When the avatar comes, he takes upon himself the effects of the karma of the world and suffers for our sake to bring about our salvation, to release us. And he does this work. We'll never forget this. We just need it.
I hear that.
Did you interpret it? It was secret Farsi.
There.
Oh, thank you, Raina. Let's see how that works. So for all of us, we were stunned by this. I mean, we didn't know what to make of it because it was just such a tragic thing. But Baba said by having this accident, he was breaking the back of materialism in the West. Now, what that means, we don't know. But he was doing this tremendous work within. So there are many things that Baba never explained, but nevertheless, he came and did it, and he suffered crucifixion and humiliation in this way. After his accident, oh, by the way, there will be a celebration, a commemoration of Baba's accident in Prague, Oklahoma next year. There are some people here who are working on that. In case you're interested, you could ask Barbara Roberts about it. It should be a very interesting thing to do, to celebrate that. Baba did go to New York after he was more recovered. His left leg was still in a cast, and his right arm was in a cast. His nose had been broken, his teeth were thrown out, and he suffered greatly. But he still, after seeing doctors, still gave darshan in New York City in the penthouse apartment of Ivy Deuce, the Sufi Murshid, for 3 days. Our family and many others were asked to be on the premises at the same time. And that was a rare privilege to be there just in Baba's atmosphere. And we didn't expect to have any private time with him, just to be around him and absorb Baba's presence. That's all. And Baba worked on us all the time. He worked on everybody in unseen ways. I was upstairs and having my own experience during that time, but each of us had particular duties. My mother had to, there was a big chart about Baba saying he's approachable to one and all through every ism and no ism at all part, and it didn't stick with me. So she declined to do that, and I just didn't remember it. Baba then asked me to come forward to stand next to his shoulder, and he held up the board for me to read. And you know, it was like, wow. And you know how fast Baba goes, if you've ever tried. And I was scared in a way. And he knew I could get scared over little things. And so he looks up at me, and he says, ready. And he goes very slowly, and he points, and he looks up. And I look at him, and I go, all I got was that it was 4 letters. And he goes, I said, I don't know yet. And so he looks up again, and I said, I've really got to try and see this. And he goes again, and he looks up, and I knew I'd gotten only 2 letters. And he knew that too. I said, once more. And I thought, I'm going to concentrate on the last 2 letters. And so he looks up, and I said, oh, soft. Soft. Make the fruit salad very, very soft. And so Renee and I went back to the kitchen. It was a sweltering hot day in New York with no air conditioning. We were oblivious to that. We washed our hands, washed the fruit. It was a bowl this big, I'm not kidding. All kinds of fruit. And we peeled it and cut it up, and Renee kept saying to me, mush it, make it soft, make sure there weren't any seeds or anything like that. And I felt badly that 3 grapes fell on the floor. You know, I couldn't put those in. And Renee and I said afterwards the salad was salted with our tears because we couldn't help but weep because we were so happy to serve Baba out of love. And to have that experience reverberates in life, because whenever you're preparing food, you can think of preparing it for Baba with love. So he was giving us an opportunity and a lesson at the same time. Afterwards, Renee heard that he was very happy and could eat the fruit salad. And then another afternoon, after all the people who were there for interviews left, Baba would have all those who were on the premises come into the main waiting room, and he was wheeled out in his wheelchair and sat in front of us. He was telling different things, which I don't remember, but I do remember that all I could do is discover that I was adoring Baba, and I never knew what it meant to adore anyone, and I was just enwrapped adoring him. And all of a sudden, Baba, he's just going on, and he, in between while he's going without even a break, he says, "I am adorable." And so he acknowledges things exactly like that, as quickly as that. Whatever you're thinking, he catches it. And I became convinced that he knows what we're thinking all the time. I was doing particular inner work upstairs, and when we came downstairs and we were called into his room, we all sat crowded onto the floor. The King Janak story was being told to us while Baba was giving messages to different ones. Baba held up his fingers like that, and he looked right at me, and I got it. He was like, "I know what you were doing upstairs, and I was the one doing it. You thought you were doing it, but I was doing it." And that it once again showed me that he really does know. And this was all the beginning of building confidence and faith in Baba. And after not seeing Baba this time in 1952, we didn't know when we would see him again. So here we are going home away from Baba with those memories and trying to assimilate those memories and hold on to those, never to forget them and never to be apart, away from Baba, to try to know the deeper meanings. For me as a young person, it was real work to challenge the myths of life, because they no longer hold up once you know Baba, and you don't need them, because there's nothing more secure than Baba, and that's all you need, because Baba is everything. But meanwhile, I had to challenge all those things within myself that I knew wouldn't work, and because I wanted to obey Baba and live a life in accordance with what Baba has said. Even though I was familiar with the discourses and all of that, this somehow was a really deep resolve to do this, a deep determination. And in addition to that, I had this incredible longing that was very, very painful. And I couldn't go very far away into my own life of indulgences and things that most people want to indulge in, because Baba was always tugging me. It was like the story of the hounds of heaven were after me. Come, stay with me. And so Baba had kept me close in hand as he helped me through those years of absence between times. But then now 1956 came along, and we were so excited and anxious to see Baba again. And this time we knew with anticipation what a great and wonderful thing it would be. We had saved up our money. We all had jobs and were working so that we could be among those who were traveling. Anyone could travel with him. Anyone. And there were only some 48 or 9 people, including Baba and his mandalay. It's so amazing that there were so few, but we were on this tour. Our family went down to New York, and we went out to the airport and went out around to outside the fence so we could see Baba's plane coming in. And as Baba and the group came down the stairs, he spotted us and we were waving to Baba and Baba waved back to us. And it was just such a thrill from that distance to feel Baba's hand touching us. And Baba had to go through customs, and a crowd of Baba people were waiting outside of customs in the big waiting room. Baba embraced every single person. Then he went outside and got into the car, the convertible car, and the hood was lowered so people could see him. He went to the Delmonico Hotel, and people got in their taxis or vehicles and went to Delmonico. And the great feast began once again. People from all over had interviews. Ella Winterfeld and others were signing people in. And we were just, our family and others were just on hand. We didn't expect any, once again, we didn't expect any special personal treatment. We just wanted to be around and participate in this grand feast that all these other people were having. So this went on for days, and we would always watch Baba coming and going, and he would give us these side glances, and we go, wow, the impact of his love in these glances like that. And so then Baba called different groups up to his room. Our Schenectady group was called upstairs to a suite of rooms. Baba talked with us, and one of the things he said was, "You are bliss itself, and I suffer agony so you could know this." And there's a whole page following that. After the Schenectady group left, Baba held our family back with him. And he said to me, he took my father and me aside. He did different things. And he said to me, "In Myrtle Beach, I'll tell you about your eyes." And I thought, oh my goodness. I was going to ask Baba what to do about my eyes. And I knew Baba knew what was going on. And sure enough, he confirmed that he did know. And so he brought up the topic. I never thought to bring up the topic in 1952. Never occurred to me. You see, to go back in my history, from the time I was a small child, I had a condition known as alternating crossed eyes. And my life was very difficult for that reason. I had very good vision, but I just couldn't see what was going on, whether it was here or over there, and made reading difficult too, and various other things. Narina had suggested that I do the Bates eye exercises, which I did. In 1952, when I was in high school, Baba sent a message, one to my brother and one to me, and asking us to write back to him saying what we were doing. So I wrote back saying that I was studying shorthand and typing, but not all that well, and doing the Bates exercises that Narina had suggested, and that I liked artwork. Baba wrote back saying, study shorthand and typing very, very well. So I did, and continue the eye exercises. Then, as it turned out, my eyes became such a problem that I had to leave work for a while, and I concentrated on further exercises, which actually taught me what you all have is fusion, where the images are fused. So mentally I knew that, but still couldn't do that with my physical eyes. But anyway, since I was a child and all through the years, I knew that Baba would take care of this for me somehow, that it would all be resolved. And this was also my faith and trust in Baba. And Baba comes through, and he did, but it was when I was 22 years old. So he made me wait, but it was worth everything, because that was the right time for me. Now I'm going to stop there and continue where I left off, because we're still back. I'll go back later in time to Myrtle Beach when Baba did tell me about the eyes. So now, here we are back in the Delmonico Hotel in this room with Baba. And our Shaw family was there, my parents and my brother and sister and me. Baba had us sit around a circle. And Baba was sitting on a chair, we were on the floor. Adi was not interpreting, and it didn't seem unusual to us at all that Baba was not saying anything to us or anything was being interpreted. Baba just sat there and he turned the faucet on. He was just pouring his love out to us. Just sitting there, smiling, just pouring it it seemed a long, long time. We were lost in eternity in this outpouring of divine love. And we drank and drank to our heart's content. And then we were so filled that I found that I could afford to give it all back. I didn't have to keep it. I could give it back. And that love is a giving. He showed us this rhythm of give and take, and that's what Sahavas is, the give and take of love. And that's what he was giving us, this give and take of love. We felt a unity, a oneness. And it's also the joy of sharing an experience that is so deep with each other, knowing the other one knows what that feels like. And this is, Baba could get the hearts of 5 people all in unison to experience oneness. And later, I discovered in India at the East-West gathering, Baba could get the hearts of 5,000 people to experience and join in this feeling of oneness and love for God. And his love was going out to the whole world and to the whole universe. And so Baba was showing us how he can do that. So after that was over, Baba had a conversation with us about family matters. He said that my brother should enlist in any armed services the Korean War was on. And so my brother was drafted into the service and went, but he was delayed in Seattle and only went to Korea for the last 2 months of the war, and the war was over. He stayed with Warren Healy for a long time. Baba asked my mother, he said, "Are you going to worry?" She said, "Yes, Baba." And then later on she said, "You know, Baba took it all away. I couldn't worry." So after this lunch was over, we hadn't had lunch. And my mother always wanted me to make sure I didn't forget to mention that for lunch, Baba gave us each a chocolate candy. Yes. So our times with Baba were always so filled. Baba gave these interviews, and another time he had people, all of us come in, the whole room was filled with Baba people, and Baba played sort of a light-hearted game of tossing fruit to us, this way and that way, and so on. And it was very light-hearted for everyone. So Baba could show us different sides of himself, and people could enjoy this light-heartedness of being with him. I'm going to skip over a few things because 1956 is so interesting. I can't mention everything. You could read about it in Phyllis's accounts in the Awakener magazines. Baba gave discourses many times at the barn in 1956 and 1958. They were so wonderful, and somehow we seem to understand them beyond the mind, at deeper levels. That was really, truly wonderful. Now I'll just go back to my eye story and finish that. Bob again took us all, the whole crowd of people, to his house and showed everyone through his house. After they were leaving, Baba was stationed at the exit door and would pat someone or say something to each person, and just like a regular person, and making everyone feel comfortable and at home with him. And as I was exiting the door and onto the porch, my father and I happened to be standing together, and Baba took hold of us, and he said, and my father interpreted, he said, "That means tomorrow." And Baba went, he pointed, and 9 o'clock, the Shaw family come to Lagoon Cabin, which we did. We gathered there. We sat with Baba. He embraced us, and we sat with him. And then Baba said, "Tell me about your eyes." I knew he knew what was going on. And so I thought, well, he wants me to tell what happened. I did. I said, while I was working at General Electric Company, an anonymous engineer saw me and went to the head doctor saying that he would pay for an operation for me for my eyes. The head surgeon called me in and asked me if I would agree to that. I said I would let him know as soon as I came back from vacation, because in a few days I knew I was going to see Baba and would take it up with Baba. I told all this to Baba. Baba nodded, And then he turned to Dr. Nilu and consulted with him, saying, "Do you think that's a good idea? What do you think we should do?" Dr. Nilu said, yes. And Baba said, "Yes, go ahead with the surgery. Have it in October and say my name for 5 minutes beforehand." Then, I'm still in 1956, on the tour with Baba. All of our family was with Baba at the Holiday Lodge in San Francisco. On this particular day, Baba was giving interviews, and so we couldn't be with him all the time. On this particular day, here again, my father and I happened to bump into each other and say, "Let's go have a cup of tea." It wasn't our normal habit to do that, but just as we were sitting down to do that, a call came, "Baba wants the Shaw family." Everybody jumps up drop everything and really run to Baba's room. And here we were, sitting in Baba's room with him, having tea. And then Baba motioned to me. He was sitting very close. I was sitting on this end of the couch, and he was sitting in a chair, sipping his tea. And then he picked up a little paperweight, and he motioned for me to catch it. I caught it, and he said, "Keep that with you." I knew that meant to keep it with me during the surgery. So after we went back home, I scheduled the surgery. He said, "Have it in October." I cabled Baba for October 15th. Baba cabled back saying, "Be brave in my love." And I thought, I don't need to be, why is he saying be brave? But Baba knew the inner meaning of that. It was more than a physical meaning, which I didn't know at the time. The doctor said I had 1 chance in 4 of having it come out right. I didn't worry about it. I knew I was in Baba's hands, whatever happened. So the surgery took place. In those days, they did it in such a way that I had bandages on completely for 2 weeks, and then gradually opening my eyes for 3 more weeks, so that I could see all the time after that. Especially during the first 2 weeks, I was a blind person. I had no preparation for this. Suddenly, this is what happened. I was not upset by this in the least. My mother thought, oh, well, we'll have all these wonderful conversations and so on. I was at home. Well, none of that happened because I was virtually in seclusion. I was experienced sort of dead to the world kind of thing. I didn't do anything, but what I did do was review all those scenes of seeing Baba in 1956. I was so happy. I was never tired. I was never bored. Day after day, alone with Baba, that's all I did. I basked in Baba's presence. I didn't need anything. And later I was thinking, all my desires, my desire nature, were not being fulfilled, and I didn't even miss it. I didn't even think about it. You know, with sight, there's a lot of sensation and desire, plus other things having an active life. None of that took place. I was experiencing a deep inner renunciation, but wasn't aware of it. And later I became aware that this inner connection with Baba became so deep that I had crossed the line of no return, that I would never be the same. It would never be a choice of choosing to be with Baba. That Baba was with me, and he had taken me in hand, and it would always be that way. They would never be going back to the former challenges of life. It was completely in Baba's hands. You see, Baba showed me over and over how much I could trust him. And faith and trust is what he was about, as far as I was concerned, placing everything in Baba's hands. And so that's how he changed my life. And after my eyes were open and the bandages, I was free of bandages, my mother was the first to say, "You've changed." It wasn't just the way I looked. I really was different. Nothing else had any more importance to me in life but Baba. I mean, I thought that when 52. Then I thought that in 56 and 58 and every single year. And still every single year of my life. And it continues to this day to find out that there's nothing more important than Baba. There's nothing more than sole reliance on Baba. In this state of blindness, I was completely helpless. I knew what helplessness was. And it was just maybe a shadow of perhaps what the new life was about. Which reminds me of something that dear Bao had said in Lord Meher that I could relate to and have found reasons to relate to it again many times in my life, especially most recently. Why is it when you want to find it, you can't? See, I never know what I'm going to say. I'm glad you're being patient and not falling asleep. Bao said in Lord Meher, volume 19, page 3513. He said about the new life, who knew of their helplessness? Who could understand it? Who could fathom that it was their helplessness which was holding the secret of strength and steadfastness? Who could know that such helplessness comes from relying solely upon God, and such strength comes from complete obedience, dependence, upon God. We find ourselves, many of us these days, finding ourselves in this position. And we might have thought it was a dreadful thing to have happen, but I found that however dreadful it may be, it's still all right, because it is a strength to find that we can depend on God solely. And that was the first time I found that out in 1956. And now, going back over to 1958, when we first saw Baba in the lagoon cabin, Baba immediately held my face, and he looked in my eyes like a doctor, and he said, "Beautiful," meaning his work on the eyes. I had cabled to him and to let him know about how it was. And I do have fusion. The images do come together. So I've always felt that this was Baba's personal grace, and how it shows how he looks after every detail of our lives when we're with him and when we're not with him. He's always with us, no matter what, to always have hope and faith in this respect. I don't know whether it was 56 or 58, we all gathered, of course, both times at the center in Myrtle Beach. Baba had us in the barn, and also we would be gathered around outside the lagoon cabin, waiting to be called in. Baba said, "Don't be upset if I don't call you, I'm with you anyway." And this is when I first found out a meaning of true Sahavas, that you don't have to see Baba to be with him. We were standing outside there, and all I could do was think about Baba. It didn't matter that he was inside and I couldn't see him. Of course, I wanted to see him, but it still meant I could see him within and feel him within. And so that's how I felt about it. And I also observed that among all of us who were staying at the center and had all this time with Baba, both in 1956 and 58, that for me anyway, and perhaps for others, we were relating to each other in a different way than we might have. We were seeing each other through the eyes of love. We saw Baba's love in each other, and we loved each other in a true sense, because that's what we saw. We didn't see the personality stuff, even though the personality stuff was there and people had their problems and their troubles. It was a new way of looking at people. One time there was a queue to go into Baba's room in the lagoon cabin. So we queued up. I was in the line, and Baba was sitting in the corner. As I approached Baba, I thought, oh, now I can look into his eyes again. But as I did, Baba's eyes were sparkling like diamonds, and what he was giving out was bliss. Everybody walked out of there in bliss. We just were completely on some kind of state. We were not able to. There we go again. We were not able to assess what was happening at that time or other times. When we walked the paths to the barn with Baba, in one respect, we were just physically following him, but in another respect, Baba was taking us on this journey into his realms. We were unaware of it. We were so focused on Baba that we didn't know what wondrous places he was taking us, because it was a place without words in his being. And that's where we dwelt all the times we were with Baba. And that's where we're meant to dwell all the time. And also during 1956, there was maybe it was 58, a fireworks program. And I sat near the boathouse, and I found that Baba was explosive within, that these explosions of love would just burst out like that. Following Baba is a fantastic adventure within. In 1958, when we discovered that Baba was coming again, my heart leaped for joy. I wanted to be so close to him. And then a message came to our house that, along with Billy Eaton and Adele Winterfeld, I was being asked to help do light housekeeping at Baba's house each morning during the time we were at Baba's center during his visit. Wow. So each morning, my father would come round and gather the three of us into his car, drive us over to Baba's house. We'd enter. Baba was not visible. He'd be in another room. And we'd hurriedly run through doing the dusting and other things to just lightly pick up the living room, make the beds. The three of us would gather. We somehow knew the right timing to be there in Baba's room at the right time, and Baba disappeared. Most of the times we didn't see where he went to between the time our entering and our time of getting to Baba's room. And we wound up together in Baba's room at the same time to change the bedding. We changed our position, the three at the two sides and the foot. Each day we changed the position, and it was such a joy, to be a part of that. And of course we had to do it fast, we couldn't linger. We hurried up and did all that, changed the towels and everything, and actually one day I saw a little hair on the sheet, and why not? And so you have to be quick sometimes. And one day also in the kitchen, I don't know how I happened to be in the kitchen afterwards, there was a glass that was brought from Baba's bedroom that was unfinished, which Baba had been drinking from. And I thought, And so, Baba doesn't have to tell you or make a big deal out of something, a little grace he's giving you. He was doing things like this all the time. After we finished our work each day, we'd scramble out there to the living room to sit at his feet before he would leave. And somehow this all worked out, that we had these few minutes sitting there while Baba explained certain things to the mandali and so on. It was just heaven being there, and he didn't pay any attention to us, but we knew he was paying attention to us within. One day I missed out on this special time because Dr. Donkin's door was open. It had usually been closed. Ella and Billy had gone out to the living room, and I saw the room, and I knew, well, duty is here. And I thought, well, Baba, I really want to be out there with you, and I'm going to hurry up as fast as I can and do what's necessary, which I did. By the time I finished, Baba was going out the door, and I missed. But each day, what we did when Baba was going out the front door, we all ran out the back door so we could wave to him while he was in the car heading for the center. Well, on this day that I missed out, Baba was seated in the car, and he points to me, and he goes like this, "Come on over." And I come over to his car door, and he reaches up, and he goes like this. And he caresses my cheeks, letting me know that I hadn't missed out. Another day, another day when I first entered Baba's house, Baba did come out into the living room after I had just found a little amber plastic bracelet by his chair. I was holding that, and I saw Baba come out. He was being assisted, and there was such an expression of suffering that I have never seen. It just floored me that I couldn't interrupt Baba to ask him about the bracelet, and I couldn't, I just needed to go on without disturbing him. But Baba allowed me to see this expression, how much suffering, or just have an iota of what he was going through. And before Baba came to the United States, he said, "My suffering is daily becoming more intense, and my health is daily getting worse, but my physical body continues to bear the burden. Despite it, I shall hold the Sahavas. I expect from you a deep understanding of my self-imposed suffering, begotten of compassion and love for humanity." You see, this is Baba's grace. This Sahavas will be unique in the sense that you will be witness and share my present universal suffering by being near me as my fortunate companions, being with the Ancient One who will be completely on the human level with you. It will be helpful to all participating in the Sahavas to know of the hint I have given to those living near me, reminding them of my declaration where I stated that my glorification will follow my humiliation, pointing out that this period of my Sahavas will fall within the orbit of my universal suffering and helplessness. And this also was his crucifixion. And this is how Baba suffered for us, beyond what we can imagine. That same day, after we finished cleaning, we sat before him. I was holding the bracelet. I had always tried to fathom the meaning of Jesus' crucifixion. And I wasn't thinking about that at the moment, but Baba said, Jesus suffered on the cross, and he didn't relieve himself of the suffering because it had to be that way. He had the power to relieve himself, but he had to suffer as a man would suffer for the work that had to be done. And of course, Baba has done the same. So there was the serious side of the work that Baba was doing, along with the multi-level work, the work with each one of us individually in our connection and our love for him, his universal work, and who knows everything else. Baba made our visit with him lighthearted and playful at times and serious at other times. There was a time of the men's program in 1958. It was the most hilarious program we had ever seen. To this day, we had never laughed so much. Tex is here. Maybe he'll tell you his version. I hope he will. I'm sure he can put more humor into it than I can. But it was so absolutely delightful. Baba said he almost broke his silence. He was chuckling so hard. He had tears coming out of his eyes. And at the end he said that all who had taken a part in this could come forward for an embrace. It was a men's program, but my mother, being very smart, said to herself, "Aha, I gave them a safety pin." The littlest thing is important. So she went for her embrace. And Baba kissed her on the cheek. And her cheeks became wet from his tears. And ever since then, we all noticed her sense of humor increased. But it was really just so really wonderful, that kind of humor, the sublime humor, the lightheartedness. You cannot explain that too. But then there was a live band, and there were songs. He's got the whole world in his hands. As we all came in, when Baba and the Mandali came in, they played As the Saints. Leonard Willoughby sang He's Got the Whole World in His Hands. The band struck up the music When the Saints Come Marching In, when Baba and the Mandali came in. Then at the end, the band struck up Begin the Begin. And more than once, Baba went into this quiet mood of deep inner work. And this is one of those times Baba suddenly went into this deep inner mood. And then he was in, the text could tell you at the moment he was in the chair, he was carried out and continued in this mood. A turtle was brought for him. Maybe you can correct me if I don't get it all right. Then Baba was taken to the main part of the center, where he sat in the chair outside the lagoon cabin. We all gathered, we rushed, walked through the path and rushed over to the lagoon cabin site and stood around watching respectfully. There was a hush of silence. All of nature became still. At the center, it's full of sounds, the bustling of bugs and the croaking and the frogs and the turtles and the birds. Everything was alive with sound. And all of nature became quiet and still. And all of us became quiet and still. We joined Baba in his silence. He had us look in his eyes. But at one point, I was struggling to see him, and I was always going like this to see him because I was behind people. And while he was in this, at this time, while he was in this deep mood, he suddenly looked up and met my eyes. And it was, wow. I was struck, I was dazed, because at a deeper level, I knew that whoever, whatever God is, Baba is that. And I was so dazed, I had to go to my cabin. I don't know what point I did that. I don't know how long I stayed there. I wanted to stay in that state forever. And then Renee came in. Aren't you coming to lunch? Oh yes, I better be normal. There we go. And so that was that. And Baba takes care of everything, and you have to have your food too. And so that's, part of the way Baba works with us. Yes, at one of those times, Baba's deep inner mood was so intense that, this one woman couldn't contain it. She just went out of bounds and she just rushed to Baba. Yes, she felt so much. Whatever was going on, she just couldn't handle it anymore. See, Baba was working with us at deeper levels, we were unaware of it. And we still don't know what he was doing. But he was just moving so deeply within us. And we've also felt he was doing his universal work. But she just rushed at him. Yes, and others, the Mandali, rushed to grab her so she wouldn't take hold of Baba. She what?
There was an after effect on limb of Baba's. I think it was all.
Oh, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. But this was one of these very, very unusual events that took place at the center. One of the times, and other times at the barn, Baba said, "This is no picnic. I'll laugh with you and play with you, but don't forget who I am." And he gave all these discourses, and one that has always remained particularly strongly within me is this idea that he explained to us that we have to completely focus on Baba. He took the example of someone's hat and a box and other things, and he said, you can turn your focus, your vision, and look at these other things. They represent, by just turning your angle of vision, these other things represent the subtle planes and so on. So you can go to that point. But what Baba was stressing was not that. He was stressing is to take the hat and turn it completely around so it faces God. And that was the point he was trying to get across to us. And I think that's what he really wants us to focus on, is facing God all the time. And to find out for ourselves, within ourselves, how important that is. And that's part of each person's inner journey with him. We had another time in San Francisco, the same time we had tea. It goes back to the interim time between 1956 and 1958. I had a dream of Baba. And I was working then, trying to be happy, trying to follow Baba's, saying, "Be happy in my love." But in this dream, Baba came to me and he said, "So how are things? How is it upstairs?" Meaning in my mind. And I said, "I think I'm doing very well, Baba." And because I was trying to be happy. And he said, "That's not what you should have said." And he said, "What you should have said is, I am happy when I live only for you." I woke up from the dream and wrote it down. And I thought, wow, that's a different kind of happiness. Because I was just doing mental gymnastics. The real happiness doesn't come from anything else but living only for Baba. So I tried doing it. I was spending my time trying to do it. Not knowing whether I was really doing it or not, but just trying. So here we are now in 1956 having this tea with Baba in San Francisco. And to begin with, Baba's sitting there and we're not saying anything. Time doesn't have any measure when we're with Baba. It's an eternity and it's timeless. But after a while, I was thinking, no one's saying anything. Baba immediately said, "We don't need to talk." And he points to us and he says, "They live only for me." He was answering my dream, confirming it. So he's always there to answer and confirm. And this is one of the ways that he works with people. Many people will say many other different things, but this is how he was working with me in my inner journey with him and when I was not with him. We had times going to the beach with Baba. The first time was in 1956 when Baba said we'll all go to the beach and look for beautiful shells so that the best ones can be taken back to Mera and the others. So we had to spread out and look for shells. This was very difficult for me because having to leave Baba's side and look for a shell was, you didn't want to do that, but still you wanted to obey him and go on your search. I found myself going a greater and greater distance away from Baba because I couldn't find any shell that was worth anything. There were slim pickings that day. So finally I picked up this shell. It was sort of okay, not too good, really not good at all. And all of a sudden Baba's standing there right next to me. I didn't see him approach. And he goes, "Let me see what you have." I knew what it was like. And I handed it to him, and he took a look at it like this. And then he goes, and he hands it back to me. Well, did I mind if he didn't approve? I still have the shell. It was the best I could do. That was really the best at the time. Then there was this other time in 1958 when at Baba's house in the morning, Baba said, "Tomorrow is the last day and we might do this and we might do that, we might go to the beach." And he said it was very important to be as close to him physically as possible. I felt this is important for me to pay attention to this because I wasn't the type of person to elbow my way through the crowd. A lot of people managed to be up close to Baba all the time. I wondered how they did that. And I was determined that I was going to be right up close to him this time, and that he wanted me to hear that. So we got out to the beach. Purdom was there as we were approaching the beach. Baba had him get into the car with him. And while doing so, Purdom caught his thumb and hurt it. And someone ran to the center to get ice for him. Meanwhile, Baba said, "Because of this, you all have more time with me," which was true. Then that was taken care of. We all got to the beach, and as some of you know, there are these little tide pools. We got to that point. I took off my shoes, and I had a dress similar to this. I took the jacket off, the top jacket, and was carrying it, a sunback dress. I was still next to Baba. We walked through the tide pool. As we headed right for the ocean. Now, I don't know how it appeared to others, but to some others and myself, it appeared as though we suddenly were en masse rushed into the ocean. It was such a thrill to enter the physical ocean with a divine ocean of love. We had crossed an inner barrier of something by entering the ocean with him, not knowing if we were ever going to stop. It was a fantastic moment for some of us to be aware of something that was happening, that Baba was pulling us across some inner threshold. It was very thrilling. We went in to approximately knee-deep before Baba had them stop, and so that his feet could be in the water. My sister ran around and took a picture. She still can't find that picture. I'm dying to see it. So then Baba's chair was brought up onto the main part and set down. I was still near Baba's shoulder, and it dawned on me, there's no towel to wipe his feet, and here's my cotton jacket, and I just leaned over and kind of tossed it toward his feet. So someone else took it and wiped his feet. And then others got the idea and took their sweaters and other things to wipe his feet. The jacket was passed on to me, and I was going like this, oh my goodness, holding it. And I learned another lesson. You don't stop and savor that moment because you miss out on the next moment. In the next moment, Baba was off down the beach, and I was still standing there. So I ran after quickly because Baba then allowed the women to pick him up in the chair, and it was a sight to behold because every woman wanted to get a finger on it, and he said he almost fell out. It was all topsy-turvy, and it wasn't very far that they carried him all together, and he had them put him down. But it was a nice opportunity for the women to have a part of that in this time at the beach. So when you go to the beach at the center, you can feel Baba's presence, that he was there twice and put his feet in the water. The first time, he actually sat on the beach and he was working with the sand. He built this little mound, and it was a face with just two little holes and just little holes in it. And he said that was the first man. Isn't that something? Yes. Now let's see. Well, there were times when we were at the airports with Baba each time that were most difficult because we couldn't bear to let him go. In the Wilmington airport, my eyes were glued on him, and he came over and gave me one of those love glances that just filled me up to the brim. These surprising moments of intimacy that you don't expect, that he just presents himself when you're ready. He knows when you are ready to receive what he has to give. And he presented himself, and he just gave me his love again. And I just couldn't take my eyes off of him. He went back and sat down and was communicating with this one and that one, and I was boring into him. And he was suddenly looked up like, who's looking at me? And then he spotted me back there, and he went like that and acknowledged me like, okay, I know, you don't have to keep on looking at me. And so there were these times. Another time was at Meher Mount when Baba said, go out from the building and go out, walk the grounds, and see me in nature. He said, all of this creation came out of me, and see me in nature. So we did that, and we were trying to do that. I was standing at a particular spot. I still remember the spot. And then all of a sudden I felt Baba's presence next to me. And there he was, acknowledging that I was thinking of him. Then another time was on the airplane between Los Angeles and San Francisco. My mother was seated behind Renee and me. I had an aisle seat, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. I thought, well, at least I can be loving Baba. I discovered I was just completely dry. I couldn't conjure up or manufacture any love or anything. And I thought, well, what's going on here? I was just nothing there. Then my mother tapped me on the shoulder, asked me to go get her camera from my father. He was sitting in the row in front of Baba, or near Baba. Well, I gladly accepted that. I went up the aisle, and I knew what I was going to do. I got the camera, and guess what I did when I turned around? Because there was Baba ready for me, and I stole this look at Baba, and he beamed up at me, and I was so empty, and he filled me up. And I just floated all the way back and all the way to San Francisco. And when we got off the plane, it was such a joy to walk down the corridor of the airport there, to meet the San Francisco lovers approaching Baba, to see their look of anticipation, and to be in Baba's entourage, knowing what great things Baba was going to give them, was so wonderful, very wonderful for us. But so those were some of the little things that happen along the way, the surprises where Baba shows you how much he's with you. But so those were some of the little things that happen along the way, the surprises where Baba shows you how much he's with you, always with you, and knows everything that's going on. But the departures were very difficult. We would gather around him in a circle. We felt like crying. We couldn't bear to let him go. And he made us stay steady, and hold that love, contain it. He often said to us, love me, and love others. When you love others, God takes notice. And to give everything to me. And he said, if you have a small cup, that's all you can hold. But if you have a larger cup, you can hold more. So I was very determined to get a larger cup. That meant emptying more of myself out. And so he was busy filling our cups all the time. And ever more so on our departures, we were tanking up and holding his love to bear us through the rest of the days. And in 1958, I thought, I won't let you go. After he left and we returned to Myrtle Beach, Kitty asked us to return to Baba's house and finish cleaning. So Ella and Kitty and I did. After we finished cleaning, Kitty said, now let's sit here and remember Baba. And it was just like Baba was in the room. He hadn't gone at all. And it was the same way after Baba's dropped his body. As devastating and heartbreaking as that was for us, we found that he hadn't gone at all, that he's always with us, ever with us. I also wanted to read another thing. Let's hope I can find it this time. This is to Baba. He is the true healer. His love heals the hearts of his lovers. His healing love is forgiveness. His healing love is unconditional. The barriers of the limited self melt away. The fire of his love burns the lover. He is a redeemer. He restores the soul. He has taken our burden upon himself through his suffering. He frees us from the limitations of the ego self. He opens the door to eternity. His shining light pervades our being. We become attuned to his will functioning in our lives. His will is the love function of creation. And I will say, Jai Baba.